we could train in a whole new design team much easier with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the training is easier. By the way, I just started the recording. You missed some of our pad discussion, but I felt like we've got some good content here, so I'll just hit record. I'm happy to keep talking about the virtues of Onshape if you guys want to chat more about that. Our topic for tonight, though, is how do teams prepare for competition. I have some specific questions about hacking. I know that Jeremiah, he told me earlier today he can't make the call, but he's very interested to know how teams kind of mix stuff up to go and what they take. And then I know that there were some folks that were interested in how they keep their students engaged, how do we give them jobs at competition, and interested for what teams do to structure their competition roles. So let's start off with our week 4 update. Does anybody want to share anything about their week 4 update before we roll into the conversations? Nobody?
I mean, I can show what we've got. Just got to pull it up quick. All right, there we go. You able to see that?
Yep.
So we finally got the set points done on our robot. So that's the words you see on the bottom. It's kind of what we're naming all of our set points. And this was a long day on Saturday trying to get the PID tuned, but it's really just one programming student that went off the deep end and figured all this stuff out. And we've got actually a really big programming team. I think we've got 8 students on the programming team. And so the goal for this next week will be transferring the knowledge from the student that figured it out to the other ones so that we've got, that knowledge transfer for next year. And it's just kind of showing, some of the capabilities of what we've got. The robot we have is we're planning on doing the competition with this robot. We haven't found anything that we need to, do a massive overhaul on, but it's going pretty well so far.
Was that KnightKrawler face shield plastic that was on your
That's
chart?
exactly what it was. Yep. That roll was perfect. By the way,
Good.
if you do the team built version and you drive up it, and it's not all secured, you'll actually tear that plastic. So I mean, we stapled it, but I would actually probably do a spray glue on that face shield plastic, and then hopefully that would help adhere it a little bit better. But overall, it's worked great. We appreciate that.
Good. Yeah, for those who don't know, we when we were at Mini Mini, we brought a 150-pound roll of leftover face shield plastic from 2020 and gave it away to anybody who needed it. So I'm glad to see it got put to use. That's awesome.
It's also on the Everybot intake too. It's great.
Perfect. Anybody else have any updates? I will share that KnightKrawler weighed our robot and it weighed it in a whopping 56 pounds so far. We don't have a intake or arms yet or our pneumatics or control board on there, but just the frame of the elevator. Yeah, we're looking at figuring out how to add a lot of weight.
Yeah, we weighed ours without sponsor panels at 80 pounds.
We're thinking that is probably about where we're going to end up once we get all the stuff that has to be on the robot on there.
I don't think we're gonna have to add any weight to ours. I haven't weighed it lately, but it's ballooning a little bit with the girls' team.
I saw your video today with that massive intake. Yeah, you guys got a lot of weight out there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not out of the thinnest wall aluminum tube either.
As long as you're not over, doesn't matter. It's the first year we've been putting stuff on the robot and saying, well, it's not like we don't have the weight to add.
Right.
I don't
Yeah,
think we've ever been in that situation before.
Usually we're quite a bit under, so we'll see how that transpires. But I posted the link to our weekly update video in the chat, so if anybody wants to check that out again.
There's a
Yeah, we were
story
sitting there yesterday asking if how many air tanks we should put on the robot. We said, well, we have mounts for 8 of them, so
Yeah, how heavy of air tanks do you have? How many can you get on there for a ballast? There's a story that KnightKrawler in 2015, the the year that we should not speak about the game, but there's a story that they were overweight at weigh-in, so they let all the air out of their 15 air tanks, and then they were underweight by an ounce.
Yeah, that was
We're,
my foot on the scale.
we run pretty close to the edge most years.
Cambridge 5464 is in the same boat. We're light and we're never light.
Totally weird.
It's very strange. So we're at 70, still have a little bit more work to do, but we do have everything. I mean, the weight is on the robot. So
Yeah. They'll figure it out.
so we'll be 80 or under when we're done. So we'll have to figure out how to, I think, add a little bit more weight.
Yeah, usually it's cheese hole in it.
Yeah, that's what usually we're grilling it, put it on a robo diet.
Right. Yeah, I made a couple calls today to figure out where we can get heavy steel plate cut to the dimension we need to lay in our belly pan. Anybody else have any updates they want to share on how week 4 ended up for them?
I posted a link to a YouTube video a little bit further up. I mean, I can present it if that's easier to.
Yeah, if you want to, go ahead.
Sure.
We're hoping to be competition ready in less than a week or maybe 10 days. That's our goal. We're struggling with our intake.
I don't know if you guys can see this or not.
Not yet.
Oh,
Is the presenter mode not working for you?
how about that? There we go.
There you go. It's coming up.
So here's our shooter bot. It's been really exciting to make.
It's awesome.
We've been doing a lot of testing with shooting from the ground, shooting with an elevator. Yeah, it's been really fun.
I just saw that on YouTube like 2 minutes before I started the meeting. It's awesome.
Wow, you guys are gonna get so many crazy applause and cheers.
It's super cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been really fun to build and to watch come to life.
Very cool. Anyone else want to share before we move on to our main topic? All right, so competition. Did anyone have any specific things they wanted to chat about in terms of competition rules? I know there were some questions last week, and I know Jeremiah from the Ashby team, he had some specific questions, and he's planning to watch the recording. But anyone want to open up the discussion?
I think that last week I asked about like what specifically we have, when you have a larger group coming up to competitions, what teams do to have everyone always occupied, especially in like Thursday morning where there's not too much going on.
I'll share with KnightKrawler. We usually our students don't get there for practice day until usually middle of the day, lunchtime time frame. So that's only a few hours in the afternoon. And we try to do some early scouting. We try to encourage kids to get into the pits and do some scouting. We also encourage them to try to just go make friends and talk to people on other teams. Thursday is a weird day, and I think probably everybody experiences that, where there's some kids that are rapidly trying to get things done and other kids that are just sort of mingling. Does anyone else have something that they do on practice day that really engages their students?
Coming from a small team perspective, I mean, between the two of our teams, we typically take 16 students to a regional. So that's 8 students per team is what we bring. And, they're all busy. You have a 3-team drivetrain going through inspection and finishing up things. And then, but we do have a scout team too that, getting used to running our app is pretty valuable during that Thursday. Even if you're not getting like real great data, because everybody's still trying things out, but they're up in the stands and they're trying to get things figured out. So it's kind of how we roll. Very, very light.
Yeah, I should have explained for us for KnightKrawler, we send an advanced crew up Wednesday night. Like for example, when we go to Duluth, we send an advanced team up Wednesday night, and that's just pit crew and drive training, and they're there right away Thursday morning for practice day, and then the bus brings up all the rest of the students in the middle of the day. We do some we did some scouting last year that worked really well on practice day. We need to do a better job of sort of dividing out our scouting data from pre-matches versus regular matches. We learned that lesson last year to sort of isolate that. But yeah, that really scouting, it gives students a chance to kind of dig in, I think.
Yeah, I would echo that. We did that for the first time last year on 4607. Worked out all the bugs in the system, and actually, even though the data was a little bit less reliable than it would be during the qualification matches, it was actually kind of nice to look at for when we got our schedule. It gave us a little bit of an idea for the first couple of matches how we could play it.
So what about competition days? How do teams organize their students for competition days in terms of giving them things to do?
Well, I guess one I wanted to kind of ask about was how do like teams feel about separating like drive team from pit team? I know in the past we've kind of had like our most dedicated students are kind of the ones who build the robot and drive it, but it seems like I don't know how do teams approach that? Is there it's nice to give the drive team a break, but sometimes it's not possible. I was just kind of curious what the room says about that.
Cambridge splits pit and drive. Kids get tired at competition, and we just find that they're pulled in a lot of directions. And the team is smaller this year than usual. So drive team, last year we had one kid that did both roles because he was originally a pit kid and then he made the drive team. That's pretty unusual for us. So we usually have them split. And then our pit I think pit and drive go to inspection together. But the kids aren't pit and the kids aren't drive. They're scouting Thursday, and then we set up scouts. Scouts are going to be light for 5464 this year. We're talking about buddying up with teams this year. So I think if we buddy up with scouting like we did a little last year, I think that'll keep our kids a little busier and help mentor my youngers into how to do it. So that's what we do.
KnightKrawler usually has some overlap. Our pit programmer is almost always either one of our drivers or the technician. So we make sure that our pit programmer is down there watching the autos and making any adjustments that need to be made. And then usually at least one of our drive team members is one of our most active build students as well. And they just end up being a pit person by default because they're in the pits after they get done driving. But beyond that, we usually have a separate pit crew of 2 to 4 students that are in the pit or rotate through the pit as dedicated pit people.
Yeah, no, Mythic does a similar thing because we have our like main drive team of driver, co-driver, and coach, and like they're all separate from the pit. Our coach has been one of our best, like one of our, I want to say best, but one of our like most involved programmers both this year and last year. But when it comes to human player and technician, that we usually just grab someone from pit, since they're already in that area, and then we send them up with the drive team.
So I don't know that I've been involved with teams that have done both, having a segregated drive team and pit crew, and one does one does the other. And I've also been on a team where, or had a year, I guess, where, you had students on the drive team and the pit crew. I don't know that there's a right answer, one versus the other. I think it's really comes down to personnel. If you are able to divvy up the roles, it is nice from a perspective of getting more students into leadership positions. I'm going to try to split that up as well as I can. We've got about 18 students. I'm thinking we'll have 2 to 3 that are kind of dedicated to awards, judge talking, connecting with other teams, answering questions about our team. We'll probably have 3 to 5 dedicated, quote unquote pit crew, and then we'll have our drive team. The remaining students will be involved with scouting. With 18 students, that feels like a pretty decent breakdown, but I'd love feedback if maybe I'm off on that.
This is Mark from 3926. I agree with you that it's nice to split those roles up. And particularly the human player, a lot of times the human player doesn't need a tremendous amount of training or background. And we find that's a great way to get other people involved that maybe aren't necessarily ready to be in the pit crew and aren't on the drive team. And so we do that. And then the last couple of years, one of the things we've tried to do is because the kids get really tired of scouting, and that's another question I want to ask about. But because that happens, we want to rotate them out of that sometimes and give them some other things to do. We've been trying to take some of the new students or the less experienced students and rotate them through the pit when it's possible. When there's lots of action in the pit and there's lots of stuff that has to be done, then they maybe don't belong there. But if it's a little bit slower in the pit and everybody else there is experienced and they can have them, turn a wrench or something like that. It's a nice experience for them to have some time in the pit and see what it's like from that perspective. Does anybody else try to do that sort of thing?
Yeah, Mark, we do something similar. Our captains come up with a schedule for everyone on the team, when they're scouting, when they're in the pits and all that. And we usually have, one pit captain, if you will, who's always in the pits, leading everything, one of the most experienced, members, to help determine if we need to make an adjustment on the fly based on, a big repair that has to come in or whatever else is going on. But we found that rotating people through the pits is definitely beneficial, helps keep people from getting bored sitting in the stands, and it's a little more fun, I think, for everyone.
KnightKrawler puts a heavy emphasis on scouting, so we run a very deep scouting shift, and we always have one backup for the blue side, one backup for the red side, and then often the students that'll be there kind of watching the matches will be sitting with the scouts as well and helping them out. We make sure every student has a job. We end up taking usually about 40 students to a competition. And so there'll be a group of 2 to 3 students who will be on media duty. And so they'll be down taking videos or photos or walking around taking videos and photos. And then you've got your pit crew and your drive team as well. And anyone who's not doing one of those jobs is in the scouting shift rotation. And everyone usually has at least one shift a day, sometimes two.
Yeah, this is Eric with 2502. We do similar. We have our pit crew and our drive team. But if you go to a tournament, you're expected to scout. That's if you're going to be in the stands, then you might not have to do it 100% of the time, but that's a job that if you're at the tournament, you have to take up. Part of being there.
Same here. Yeah, it's a requirement that you have a job, and if you miss your scouting shift, there's consequences. It's a requirement that you're there to shift. We use the scouting app that KnightKrawler created years ago. Matt, I think Matt's on the call. Matt does a lot of the maintenance for our scouting app and the setup for that. If anyone has questions about the app we use, and then we pull all the data together the night after the first day of competition, and we have a group of 10 to 15 students that go through all of the data and do our pick list ranking.
How long?
And we're making a new one, so be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, there's Matt. So yeah, there's been this new version of the app in the works for a while. Hopefully it happens before Matt graduates.
How long are each of your shifts for scouting?
I think ours are about 2 hours.
Matt or Lexi, you guys run the shifts, right?
Yeah. In the past, I believe they've been hour and a half, somewhere around that. I don't know if there's any like regulation or it's just usually what Caleb decides. You might know more, Matt.
I'm not exactly sure on the number, but I think Caleb decides that.
Caleb is our scouting captain. Strategy captain.
Can I ask what's the role of the like scouting lead at competitions?
Yeah, I mean, for KnightKrawler, that's usually Caleb. Essentially, he has to know who is at competition, who's on drive team, any other like conflicts and stuff like that, and he puts together a schedule for who's scouting. And essentially, he's in the stands all day, every day, making sure that people are at their shifts, organizing backups, and then he also does all the data management. So taking the tablets, transferring it to the spreadsheet, and kind of helping anybody at the strategy meeting work through the process of ranking or deciding on, do we think this robot would be good for our alliance or not right for our strategy?
Yeah, Talon, we're pretty much the same, that we have a lead. That person then compiles all the data from all the tablets, but often the scouting decisions, we just have the entire teams there. Some are in the background. John Schmidt runs that stuff. And, they'll go through every team and sort of put them into different rankings as to who's absolute, who's questionable, and who's off. And then they'll be asking the kids that did the scouting why they made or put down the information. As I say, it's often the whole team can be in the room at the time when they do that analysis that night.
We use the Fires scouting app, and I posted a link in the chat. We started using it last year, and that thing is pretty amazing. It'll show you heat maps of where teams are shooting from. In last year's game, it's quite the thing, and it generates pick lists and stuff like that. So we send maybe 6, 7 of our students and a mentor up into the stands that do the scouting for that. Like I said, our teams scout together, but 2 small teams. We've tried to recruit students from other teams to help us with the process, but
we'll also do scouting in the pits to certain attributes of different robots we want to be interested in, like who has a example swerve drive, who has tank drive and all that. They don't do that from the stands as much as they'll walk through the pits and get some of that data down as well.
We collaborate with a few other teams we form. We like to call a scouting alliance for our scouting, and so we will collaborate with other teams, and we have students from every team help to scout shifts, which means that you hopefully are the scouts on each of our teams don't have to scout for that long, and we each put in like an equal amount of work, and so we share the data that we collect. And then we also use a form, a Google form that's connected to a sheet. So the data that we collect is hopefully instantly processed. We are using a similar system this year with the knowledge that the mentor who managed a lot of that last year is not currently on the team. And so we are embarking on that endeavor without as much expertise, but we are hoping to organize it again this year. But yeah, it's scouting is a fun part of our team. And then we have, as far as leadership for the scouting system, we have a scouting lead that is in the stands that will basically just be a support for the scouts if any of our students need to like take a break for a couple minutes. Our scouting lead can sub in and scout for a match, and then we'll have that scouting lead also like record who is scouting what robot during what match. And so the scouting lead coordinates a lot of the like actual process of scouting and make sure that runs smoothly. And then we actually have our strategist as a different role. And so we'll have someone who has like access to that spreadsheet, basically just look at the data collected and use it for match to match strategy. So that we can coordinate with other teams beforehand that we're on alliance with, just to see what the best strategy is. So it's a cool process.
Joseph, did you say you're using Google Sheets?
Yes.
Do you have any data issues with connectivity or anything like that in the venues?
We for our scouts in the stands, I don't think we do. I think our strategist is the only person at least on our team that accesses the sheet, and I believe I'm like not too familiar with the technology that we use, but I believe that our strategist last year used like a special tablet that was connected to data, so that ran, as far as I'm aware, pretty smoothly last year.
What are teams' opinions on using a scouting app or like Google Forms? Because I think there could be advantages to each. Like I know last year we used a scouting app, but we found that wasn't super customizable with being able to change what questions you want to ask as you realize maybe we want to actually know more about X, Y, or Z. So is there like any other, I guess, what do teams think for the advantages and disadvantages of both those systems?
I'd put a plug-in for FRC Crawler. We've used it for 3 years now. 2052's app is really, really good. I think long ago we did paper scouting, and the post-event processing was really intensive. The FRC Crawler app kind of takes care of a lot of that for you. So I'd really strongly, recommend that one.
Matt, you want to add anything else since that's your baby?
Yeah, I mean, I think it works great. I mean, it's a little bit old at this point, but it still stands up. So you get to put in all your own information on it. The biggest, I think, obstacle to using it is that you need some Android devices. So our team uses some Kindles off of Amazon. I don't know how much they were, but not too much.
I think we got them on the Black Friday sale for like 35 or 40 bucks a piece.
Yeah.
Are those Kindles or are those Amazon Fire tablets?
They're Fire. Yeah, we just bought a whole new set this year. Upgraded our old tablets to new tablets. We ended up buying 10. So we have 3 red, 3 blue, sort of the supervisor tablet that our scouting lead takes, and then we have a backup that we also use for like pit scouting. No, we didn't buy 10. We bought 8. So we bought the 6 we need for scouting plus 2 more.
And in the foreseeable future, is that still going to be a thing where it's just going to be you need a Fire or a tablet or a Kindle or something to use the KnightKrawler app?
Yeah, so the way it works is there's a central server tablet, and then there's a bunch of scout tablets that all send data to that central server tablet, and then that tablet collects everything, and that's where you download it from. So it's like the single source of truth where all the other tablets report all their findings to it.
It communicates via Bluetooth, so it doesn't use Wi-Fi because you're not supposed to do that at the events.
Right.
Yeah.
So they Bluetooth to each other to sync the data.
Is it
If
pretty?
you do use it, there is something, you only try to sync one tablet at a time, because
Yep.
Bluetooth doesn't do very well when you try to do multiple. That's not super obvious in the instructions.
Is it
Yeah, and
pretty easy
oh,
to set up? Is it pretty easy to set up? Like if we had a set of those Amazon Fire tablets?
Yeah, the only thing with the Amazon Fire is that they don't have the Google Play Store on them. So you do have to go through the process of getting the Google Play Store on the tablet. But there's a lot of online tutorials on how to do that. And then once you have the Google Play Store available to you, it's just a matter of downloading it, and then it's not too hard to set up.
I was also just. Oh, sorry, Scott. Okay, I was just gonna say, it doesn't have to be a tablet. Like when I was pit scouting last year, I just had it on my Android phone. And later that night at the hotel, I just like walked up to Caleb and we did the data exchange that way. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Students can quite literally just use their phone.
I should also note there's a pit scouting feature on it too. So if students did have it on their phone and were in the pits, they could be doing pit scouting as well.
I was going to say you don't need a Fire tablet. We only bought the Fire tablets because Amazon subsidizes the cost of those, so they're cheaper because they put ads on the lock screen if you buy the cheap ones. But if you're not connected to Wi-Fi, which we're not, you don't see the ads anyway.
For us, we just started using that fire scouting and same tablet based thing that Nightcrawler mentioned, but we're using Samsung tablets, and we have some track phones or pay as you go type phones that we Bluetooth our tablets to, and then they all sync to the couple of phones that we have, and that's how our data is transferred. But it's pretty slick. You can have somebody with their Bluetooth on in the pit too with a tablet to get all the data real time, which is pretty nice.
Anybody dislike apps? I mean, Ian asked for both sides. We've only talked about one side. Anybody against apps?
I mean, I know that we have considered like making an app before, just so that like we can collect the data that we would want to. And I think the stance that we've always taken is like if people want to do that as like an over the summer project, that would be great. But like we cannot be making an app in like the build season. But so, and I mean, yeah, like people have been saying, there's a lot of really great public resources. And so if you're considering an app, it's better to at least like look at those public resources and seeing if they're collecting the data that you would want to collect.
I will say on the making an app front, it does. I mean, it depends on how in depth it goes and like what the goals of your app are. But I mean, we've been working on our app for like going on 2 years now, and of course, it's just me and one other mentor. But it is quite the process, especially if you're working with like Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff. And with build season, it does get. I mean, I haven't been able to work on it in a couple months, but
I think another thing that's important with the scouting process is that, and we really stress this with all of our students, that the metrics are good in terms of how many times they score. Do they score high? Do they score low? Do they climb? All of those things that you typically put in your scouting system. But we really emphasize to the students that there should be something you can make just a comment on. And I think that the strategy team, we can use the metrics to sort of initially order teams, but it really comes down to the comments the students are putting into that app about the team that can push them up or down that list. So that's something that you can do regardless of what system you're using, as long as you're getting your students to give you good sort of commentary feedback. I think that goes a long ways.
I'll say that's really important because I mean, if a robot broke down for a match, the data would reflect really poorly on that robot. But if the student puts that in a comment, you can kind of understand that a little bit more.
I guess I'd like to ask about how teams are using their scouting data to like inform their qualification match, like strategy or, you know, what to expect in a match. If they are doing that, is that a good idea to do that? Too many red herrings to do that? Just kind of share. I guess I'll share for us. We generally have kind of even taken practice day data and fed it forward and had pretty good results as far as like knowing we're probably going to win this one. We're probably going to lose this one. We need to play this way in this one, you know, be sure to defend so-and-so, kind of that stuff. So I don't know, just any else have thoughts on that?
Sam, we do the exact same thing using practice day-to-day data to, you know, feed forward, just like you said. The other thing I would add is during alliance discussions about strategy, the best thing you can do is provide data. If you've got a strong opinion about how you should play a match, you just lay the data out, say, here's what you can do, here's what you can do, here's what I can do. Here's how we think we should play. What do you think? And what I've found is a lot of the time that can kind of smooth over those conversations a little bit, where it's everybody, you know, if everybody wants to be the one doing the auto bridge balance and there's no data to back it up, it's just it could be a fight, right? But whereas if you've got data and you can say, hey, we've done it 3 out of 3 times, you've done it 2 out of 3 times, that could be justification for, you know, that kind of discussion. So to me, that's the biggest reason to use data for the qualification matches, but also it can inform you how to play. For example, if you're going for the link RP, I forget the technical term for it, but if you're going for the 4 or 5 links that you need for the RP, that could inform whether you're within range of getting it, could inform whether you talk to the opposing alliance and say, hey guys, you should really do the co-op RP or the co-op link so that the threshold is only 4, especially if you think your alliance will get 4 links and not 5. Could maybe open up the bonus RP for you.
I'll also add that, I mean, I am not the strategist for our team on the scouting lead, so I don't entirely know like the strategy side of scouting as much, but I will say that scouting data is really useful for knowing auto routines. Like we'll collect data on like auto is probably like the most like hyper focused part of the match that we focus on for scouting, because like we need to know, oh, you know, your robot is starting here and ending in this location. And so we should put our robot here or coordinate with you about like putting our robot here so that we can do the things that we want to do in auto. This year is also really great for knowing like, is there a certain part of the charging station that your robot likes to get on? Does your robot accommodate other robots well on the charging station? Can other robots fit on the charging station when your robot is on it? I know like we're trying to gauge like robot width in our pit scouting, just so that like we know like, oh, your robot is this wide, so it's not going to take up as much space on the charging station, or it is wider, so we should maybe like talk to you about like, you know, do you want to play, do you want to score during the end game so that other robots can fit on the charging station? Yeah.
Question for those folks that travel light. My question stems from the fact that last year we went to Champs. We decided that we wanted to take our normal pit setup to Champs, which means taking our trailer. We spent over $1,000 of gas money and hotel rooms to get one of our mentors to drive the trailer down and drive it back. And I would prefer we not do that this year. So in terms of getting to Champs without a trailer, or any competition without a trailer, does anyone have any advice on how to pack, what to pack it in, how to get stuff under a tour bus, things like that?
Yeah, well, so before we got our trailer, we did all of ours under a bus, and you really have to design around that with your pit setup. So, you know, like our battery cart, for example, had a specific width so we could lay it on its back and slide it in underneath the bus. And we used a lot of totes and things like that, specifically designed to fit inside those bins underneath the bus. Having trailer lets you go a little bit bigger and get a little fancier, which means now we can't go under a bus.
I know there were.
We love having our trailer, but we haven't found that we used to have a bus company that would tow it for us, and we haven't found one that'll tow our trailer anymore. And taking it independently just doesn't seem to be worth it.
We were really lucky to have two parents of a student on our team volunteer to take the trailer down to Texas, which was really amazing of them. But yeah, it is also a lot to ask. I know that there were a couple teams at Worlds last year that I think shipped their robot to Houston. There were some, I think, issues that some teams ran into. There was an issue where a robot was shipped to like Arizona instead of Houston, so there were some snafus. But I think that's a fairly good way to get the robot there at least.
I know there was a group from Minnesota that were going together to get a pod. I don't know if they actually did that or not. I believe they did. But my understanding was the pod was going to be dropped off a mile away from the venue. So I wasn't sure about how the logistics of that work, and I haven't followed up with anyone about that. Does anyone know about shipping a pod down? One of the reasons why we elected not to participate in that is because we were going to be in state and we wanted a robot back a week earlier than what the pod would have arrived. But then we came back from champs and everybody had COVID, so we missed that week anyway. So John's advice is take a bunch of totes, make things that can fit under a bus.
Yeah, we've done the under the bus thing the last 3 years now, and it's really pretty much echoing what John said, is making sure that nothing's too tall, or if it's too tall, it can get laid on its back, and it's still the right height. Like collapsible the shelves you can kind of take apart and set up pretty quick are nice. So we've got some like 8-foot tall shelves, but we can break them down quick, kind of bundle them up, and then you can stash them under, take them up. So you still can have some tall structures in your pit. And the setup's really pretty quick. Kids can put those together pretty darn fast. So that's been kind of our experience. Once in a while, load-in's a little tricky, just depending on congestion and things. Buses are bigger than a car and a truck and a trailer, but not that much bigger. So your mileage may vary.
So if you're putting stuff in totes, what do you leave behind? Because right now we pretty much take everything because it all fits in our trailer. But what are you leaving behind? Anything that's not on your current robot. So if you don't use this gear or you don't use these types of wheels, you leave those all behind. I mean, I guess that sort of makes sense. But are you bringing backups for everything that is on the robot?
Yeah, that's kind of, at least our process has been, a couple nights before we leave, have a couple students go through the robot and make sure there's, if it's not on the robot, it doesn't get packed essentially, or and sometimes once in a while you're at the competition, like, man, I really wish I had this bracket that wasn't on there, but it'd be nice to strap on right now. And if you know the name of it, maybe you can ask people who travel heavier. But I guess that's been kind of the other trade-off we've noticed is you leave things behind that you need, and you have to ask other people essentially, and hopefully other teams provide. That's all you can do.
Anybody else have any competition topics they want to discuss tonight?
Yeah, I have a question. Because and I know this is going a bit away from scouting, but as for pit size, these past like this year and last year, No Mythic is has had 3 people that have been there the whole time, or 3 build students that have been there the whole time, and then 2 spots that rotate in and out, plus a mentor plus 2 programmers. So how are like pit sizes for all of your teams?
Well, for Nightcrawler, I would say that on the average, we probably have 3 students and 2 mentors in the pit all the time. And sometimes that, and then students, of course, come down and check things out or check on the robot and things. And sometimes we have to tell students, okay, you need to go away. There's too many people in the pit, especially when there's judges coming around. That's really hard when you have 10 people around your pit and the judges are trying to talk to the drive team or the captains or whoever's responding to the judges' questions. But I would say, yeah, 3 to 5 students in the pit, 2 mentors. That seems pretty typical for us.
I'd echo what Scott said. I think, especially if you can make yourself kind of a like a pit assigned pit crew list, and maybe even a rotation if you want to involve more students. Basically saying if you're not on the official schedule, you shouldn't be standing around the pits. I know we've had problems where you have 12 kids standing around, and it's like, okay, we need to clear out. This is getting messy, and I don't know, being disciplined about that I think is important, and setting the expectations before the event so you don't have to introduce new rules while you're, I don't know, while you're competing essentially.
Cambridge is the same. We have pit crew stays there. Same like everybody else. We have to shoot kids out when they come. It gets crowded. We want to make sure the judges talk to the captains and the department heads or pit crew. So, just like everybody, we have to every once in a while. I think we always tell our kids and give our kids those expectations. I think the most challenging part we have with our pit is parents. And so we just have to, encourage them to be aware of the judges. Our kids are aware. I just don't think parents are as aware of it. And that's, fair. They want to see the robot. They want to see what's going on down there. So that's what we do. But we have 2 kids that don't leave the pit. It seems like they only leave for competitions. Bots on the field. The kids are up in the stands. And then Will and Owen never leave the pit.
They pull up their chairs, sneak a Rice Krispie treat,
and
relax,
and never leave. They watch the matches down there on the screens in the pit, and we can't get them out. They don't want to leave the pit, so that's their role. And they're good ambassadors. They know exactly what's going on, and my programmer is always down there too.
They prefer watching matches on the TV.
I don't think the program is always down there. Programmer's there or on the field or with, drive team. We only have one.
Well, this is Talon. We sort of have an overlap of our pit crew and our drive team. We usually have one of our captains, sort of the head of the pits, and a couple of mentors there. But the one thing we do is we like to have all the students have a chance to at least come down to the pits. So we schedule. So the kids that are scouting, they all get a chance. We keep track of how many we want in the pits, but then each of them in the stands gets some time that they could just come down and hang around the pits. But that means we might have, just maybe 2 or 3 extra, not everybody, because we keep them up in the stands. It's just a method we do to make sure everybody's involved, not necessarily that they are turning a wrench or anything, but just so they have the pit experience.
Yeah, I like that idea, Eric. That try to get some more kids through the pits. Typically what we have is our drive team, which is our pit crew on both of our teams, and 2 mentors per team. So it's 3 kids and 2 mentors per pit. But yeah, alternating some of those other folks through to see if there's an interest there is a good idea.
A question about buttons. So I'm the grumpy old guy who gets upset about spending the money and spending the time to make 200, 400, 600 buttons that students wear for 2 days and they eventually make it into the landfill. And we've been trying to brainstorm some more sustainable types of ideas of things that would be a good button substitute. that's affordable and could be done in a reasonable amount of time. And we've been really struggling with this idea that it's got to be something better for the environment that is about the same price point. And I'm curious if anyone else has any thoughts about this.
Well, I don't know about environment, but we have wristbands that we design each year, and that seems to go over well. A lot of other teams, they come by and we just hand out wristbands. We do have some buttons occasionally, but I think we go a little bit more heavy on wristbands.
We've got kids that love designing buttons, so if that's what they're into is doing that graphic design type of stuff, that's more power to them. So we do buttons. But one thing that we're going to do this year, and I stole it off of Facebook, but they have the little cube and the cone earrings. We're going to turn those into pins. It's just a little tiny piece of acrylic once you get done laser cutting it. Little pins that we're going to give out to the special people, I guess, because we don't have an unlimited quantity. But I don't know. It's a good thing. Yeah, just like that. Yeah, just what John's got hanging up there. Yep. Yeah, we got our own version of that. So I don't know. It's a good creative outlet for kids that might not be on the build team, but they still want to do some design work and create something on one of the machines that have available to them. So I got one kid that's just nuts about making buttons and cutting out these little pins right now. So good for him.
The other thing we do
we're laser cutting these for the volunteers at Stakes this year.
Another thing we do every year is we put out playing cards with our robot on them and some of their specs. And so, yeah, each year we have another playing card. And I presume that's not too expensive to put out. Just a few of its attributes of that specific robot, its name and a picture.
Something we did at North Star Regional last year was, so I was bored and I wanted to learn CAD, so I CAD'd up a limelight cover that would like slide over the limelight to prevent it from like blinding people's eyes in the pits. So we put our team logo on it and handed those out to all of the teams. So that was kind of like almost a collectible, but it was also functional in a way, and giving it function hopefully means that, you know, it avoids the landfill a little longer.
Yeah, I can say from from a price and effort standpoint, I don't know how you get your buttons, but like we order them. We just like send them a copy of our. We have a website that we order from, and we send them a copy of our logo, and I think we spent like around $200, around $250 on like 1,000 buttons that would probably last us through like this year and next year. But from a sustainability standpoint, I like that you're thinking about that. And I honestly wish that we had thought about that more when ordering swag. We are doing we ordered like stamps this year, so we're ordering like a 2-inch by 2-inch like circuit a 2-inch stamp with our team logo on it, and we got like a skin safe ink pad that we're gonna see if it works and see how well it like sticks to skin, but that's something that is very cheap. And I mean, I don't know the like impacts of like ink on the environment, but that's something that I'm kind of excited for this year. We also have like Mardi Gras beads, and we order like rubber ducks for little kids that go into the pits. Those are a little bit more expensive, so we get them in a smaller quantity and specifically hand them out to like kids 5 years and under. And then we order wristbands as well. So,
well, speaking of kids, one thing we started doing last year is making little pink gift bags for kids. It has a bow in it and kid-sized safety glasses. So they have some place to store the buttons they collect, and they have safety glasses that fit their face well when they show up. And we give those out to all the little kids when they come in.
on the topic of buttons, this is something that is not honestly too important for like, you know, our team or, you know, our students, but it does kind of like get me down a little bit to see like some students on our team that just like go around to the different pits and then will like take a button without really talking to anyone on the team. And I like try to encourage that, but it's not always very effective. So do you all try to encourage that? And if so, how? Yeah.
So 5464 does encourage that. You'll find on Thursdays that my kids who don't have anything to do, those are the kids that are in the pits, and those are going to be my youngest, most likely. So definitely, I think it's good for them. Thursdays are tricky to talk to people, obviously, as they're getting ready for inspections and the whole spiel. But those are the kids that I'm going to have in the stands doing scouting. I mean, that's all I have. So I think it's really important they talk to teams and see differences, and you know, kids are excited and every team runs differently, and it's fun to watch, especially new kids to FRC get excited. And so no, we definitely encourage that type of engagement with teams.
We try to encourage teams that come to our pit to talk to us by, especially when we start running low on buttons, we put the bucket halfway back in the pit so that people have to ask, hey, do you have buttons? And we're like, yeah, we do. Thanks for asking, type of deal. So we try to encourage that interaction by making buttons a little bit tougher to get. You got to at least ask for them.
And on the button thing, I like, here we are getting ready to make ours, and it's just one more thing. So I'm with you. Like the buttons, it's like, oh, I get kids that, you know, Thursday and Friday they start collecting buttons, and if they're wearing that shirt Thursday and you see it on them Friday, you know that they're like wearing dirty clothes. Like they didn't undo all those. It's like just not my favorite thing. But just like the other team, I have kids that are like bonkers over making buttons. And so it's just one of those things that they really like. I'd like to see maybe something different, but they just love sitting there, you know, meticulously doing it. So we still make our buttons at 5464. Ordering them sounds like totally the way to go. One less thing to do.
We make our buttons as well. And we do have kids that like the graphic design aspect to that. And I'd love to find something creative that we can replace it with, but
well, if anybody's making cone earrings, I want some.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know. I don't know that there'll ever be an answer that I'll be satisfied with from a money or time or sustainability effort, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I think buttons are pretty complicated because I think there's definitely like a culture in FRC where, you know, it is fun to collect buttons, like not me looking at my, you know, collection of buttons just like, you know, off camera to that side over there with like 20 buttons or so. But at the same time, it's a lot of work, and something I've been doing with my work with Minnesota Rainbow Box Inclusivity Alliance is before all the competitions, because there's a button maker at my school, I've been like spending 2 hours just making buttons by myself, and it's a lot of time, but also like we see benefits where like specifically for that program, and Joseph, who's also a leader on it, can probably speak more to it, but like I think being able to see, you know, someone has that button on and like, you know that they're an ally and like a safe person to talk to. So it's definitely like, you know, something where we've seen, I think there's definitely pros to buttons and then also cons, a lot of it being, you know, time investment.
I mean, even first hands out those pins and buttons, right, when you become mentors and coaches every year. So, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's the culture. I can't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, I will say, like, yeah, there are a lot of pros and cons, and, you know, it's as much as I dislike the sort of just like take a button and leave culture of like, you know, some like students in and go to competitions. It's also like we did a thing at Worlds last year where we had like a, what do we call it? Like a swag, show off your swag day. So we just had like one of our post competition team meetings. We just had everyone like wear all of the like team like the regalia that they had gotten from other teams, and just we put on like runway music and had people like show off their swag, and it was a really fun experience. But it's also like, you know, like again, like I see people taking buttons and I'm like, you could be making so many FRC friends. But to that note, this is going back to scouting. You know, pit scouting is encouraging pit scouting is a really good way to make sure that people are making those connections. I mean, that involves so much like conversations with students from other FRC teams. And I know like we have mentors on our teams that like did pit scouting, you know, 15 years ago, and still have like contacts on their phone that they got from that experience that they like still like will send messages to every now and then. And so that is a really great way to connect with other teams at competitions.
Does anyone do any special stuff with like alliance partners or anything like that? For example, KnightKrawler, all students get a rally towel, and then we bring enough rally towels so that the drive teams, and I think drive team and pit crew of our alliance partners, if you get to a finals with an alliance partner, we give all of our alliance partners rally towels for their drive team, and I think also pit crew. Does anyone else do anything similar to that?
Hasn't been an issue for us really. Till last year, we did okay, but yeah, not a big thing.
I know something we did in the off season was like if we were on an alliance with a team, we'd have everyone we were on the alliance with sign a game piece that we had. So it's like almost a memorabilia of like, you know, we are on an alliance together. So I think, you know, we'll get a cone, and you know, if we're on an alliance with people, hopefully, then you know, it will be filled with signatures.
I know that Swart Dogs from, speaking of buttons, Swart Dogs from Iowa, I forget where they are, Cedar Falls maybe. They bring their button maker to competition in their printer, and they print alliance buttons, and they make buttons at the competition for their alliance partners to wear during finals.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, something that Nomadic has done in the past was, and I guess it started in 2020 in Duluth, but we have this one cart that the pit all signed. Yeah, that's a cool little thing that No Mythic does. And then we have all the signatures from the pit on there.
Well, we've run past our hour again. Does anyone have any final things they want to share or ask questions they want to ask about competition rules or just competitions in general? Oh, people, go ahead, do it. 3 people.
You can start.
Okay. My main question, something that we have struggled with, is how do you all facilitate breaks at competitions? Because I mean, obviously they're really important. Competitions are really stressful, and we want our students to be able to function. But breaks can be hard to facilitate, both, you know, in the stands and making sure that there are like people that are scouting during matches, and also like, you know, I'm not in the pit, but I understand that to be a really difficult process of like when students leave, it's a big process. And so how do you facilitate breaks, both like encouraging people to take breaks and the actual like mechanics of when a student takes a break? How do you make sure that you can fill in the role fast and make sure that any like role that they're taking on is being done?
So I don't know if
breaks are part of the schedule. Yeah, so you know, we had that full schedule, and you have scheduled breaks for everyone.
Our kids are connected with a platform so they can reach each other. So if one of our kids is on a break, then, you know, you might need them in a hurry, depending on whatever is going on. Most of the time we're pretty good at the scheduling, but every once in a while we'll have a kid that has to book it because, you know, their break time kind of overlapped with, oh, crap, they're in queue. But they're connected. We have them all connected on Discord and some other things. So different conversations with different teams so that we can always reach them and get them where they need to be.
Ian, what was your question?
Yeah, so my question was like about team bonding activities people do on trips. So I was talking to a couple other people on my team, and we were all like saying that team bonding is something that we see happening a lot on especially overnight trips for robotics. And because we're doing 2 of them this year, we were trying to figure out how we could expand that, because one of our goals this year has been improving our team cohesiveness.
Is this specifically at competitions or throughout the season?
I think specifically related to competitions and competitions where like you're probably more likely traveling.
I mean, my answer to that is like, yes, competitions are very stressful. But there are times when people are not at competitions. We take a bus up to Duluth and we bond with both our team, and we usually take a bus up with the Rebetson. So it's a great bonding experience for both of our teams. We also have nightly meetings with our entire team where we'll, give appreciations and gratitude to each other. We'll make sure to share your gratitude throughout the day on our Slack channel. We have team dinner together. There's a lot of bonding that happens in individual rooms that people share. With in city competitions where people aren't with each other all the time, it's a little bit more difficult. We didn't have as much bonding with our Minneapolis North Star Regional last year as we did in Duluth, but there are still those opportunities for our I think we had a required team meeting after one of our Friday competition in Minneapolis, and so there are a lot of times outside of the competition day that you can use to bond with your team.
Yeah, and I think another part of that is we had, because I'm also on Nomadic, but we had triads that at our closing meetings. So you'd have 3 people and they're sort of set up so you'd have 3 people from different areas of competition. So you'd have a scout, a member of the pit, and a drive team person that all sort of get together at that closing meeting and just sort of talk about how their day's gone. And I think that's a really cool way to both talk about how the day went, but also learn more about what the other parts of the team were doing during the day.
One of the things that has sort of organically happened with KnightKrawlers, and it doesn't happen every year, but we will often have a student who's really into video production, and they'll sort of make a mini documentary about the trip. They come back and they stitch the video together, and they get a lot of the students on the trip as part of the video. I think that has gone a long ways towards bringing groups of kids together.
Yeah, I think it's definitely really cool, and it's really awesome to be able to look back and be like, oh my gosh, I remember doing that. Or as a student who was, in the stand scouting, to be like, oh, this is what it's like for the drive team to go through their day and stuff like that. I think another thing that I don't know if this was just a byproduct of last year and making sure that we were tracking COVID, but we had pods at Duluth, and essentially you would go out and do dinner with your pod. And so it was a really cool way to be like, oh, maybe I'm a control student who hasn't really talked to people on build, but now we're in a pod together. So we're going to go and get dinner every night. And I'm going to get to know my team members more through that. That was really cool.
This is Talon. We have required team meetings every week. And then part of that meeting is breaking up into random groups and playing games against each other. So we all get to know each other because, as I say, we're randomized. So and we're a pretty large team, but you might have 8, 10 people together, break up into, this is with mentors and the teammates, into like 5 different groups, and then each group has a little chore, and then we'll all compete with each other. But at those times, you're bonding with different people every week, so you get to know everybody that way. And we also have team get-togethers doing throughout the year that we have the whole team just doing fun stuff together.
I will also say this is less of a like structured recommendation or activity, but I do think like a lot of team bonding just happens as a byproduct of competition. Like competitions are when people realize like all of this work that we've done has paid off in this really big way. And whether or not we like rank high at the competitions we go to, like competitions are when that like we love you, and the gratitude really starts rolling in, and really when we start connecting as a family. And honestly, we do have these like structured ways of facilitating that, but I think a lot of it also just comes from like in our closing meetings where like this was a really intense day, and we're so proud of all of you for doing all of the work that you're doing, and just like recognize that like recognize the people on this team and all of the work that they've done. And again, that's less of a like structured recommendation or activity, but I do think that there are like ways to just sort of facilitate the recognition of all of the work that people have done that really is, I think, the most effective way of team bonding.
Cheryl, did you have a question too?
Yeah, it's not a question, it's more of a statement. Nicole and Ken and I were chatting because I have a collected group of kids, but I always have kids that love that junkyard bot up in Duluth. Same crew that are big on buttons, but they're not doing that. The crew that are committed that did it doesn't do it anymore. So 5464 is going to, we just got approval from them, and they should be handing out or blasting it out soon, to do little miniature type pit bots instead. And then there'll be a sign up at check-in, and then the kids will do, there'll be like a voting box or whatever, since people are going to the pits to kind of, it's a kind of a hit or miss, right? If kids want people around their pits or not, but it'll all be done on Thursday. So it'll give some of the kids something to do that don't have something to do. And then there's prizes handed out, Andy Mark gift card, $100 Handy Mark gift cards, $50 concession cards for the winners on Friday. So that'll be blasted out by Ken and Nicole, I think. If it hasn't already gone out yet, I haven't checked. But that's what's happening up in both sides. We're doing both sides of the deck this year. So no junkyard bots, but their committee's not there anymore. So it's something little, something fun, maybe for those, stragglers on the team that need a little extra something to do.
For people who didn't experience competitions before COVID, I'm not sure what junkyard bots is or was. So could you explain what that was?
Yep. So it was just really, it was
an art project.
An art project, I would say. Yes, mostly. And it's all just recycled stuff. And it was a great way for our like welders who were not welding on the robot or something like that to repurpose things they find around the shop. Or one year, families brought in a bunch of stuff, and then I had a bunch of junk to get rid of. But it's always been a real big part our team likes. There's not going to be any interviews with this one. There's not going to be anything like that. It's super simple because we know competition's busy. So it's literally, there's a flyer that I can figure out how to send. I don't know how to attach it on here, but there's a flyer that I can send out somewhere. I don't know if somebody wants to give me an email and then we can blast it out to you guys, but it's literally just whatever you want, whatever size you want. Our kids know what size they want in the pit. There's not a lot of room in the pit, so we know they're going to be little. and then just your team number and whatever you want in your pit, and it's recycled materials. That's the only guidelines that's on this one. And then the winners will be put out on display, but there's no arrows going on them, no judging, no interviews, no anything like that. This is just to get that junkyard bot thing back into the deck, which she wanted, but she didn't have the crew to do it. I don't have the crew to do it, so we're doing it on a smaller scale. Try it on a smaller scale, and then maybe, when my team grows back to its normal size, we'd be able to handle back the junkyard bot. So, but the prize denominations are still the same. $100 for Andy Mark as first place. So that's something new. That's not what they used to do. But I just feel like our kids could use, what team doesn't buy something on Andy Mark? So we just wanted to make sure the prizes were something that was worth participating in.
That sounds really cool. Thanks for sharing about that.
I've been hanging on to this robot here that's made out of filament rolls from our 3D printing project. His name is Phil A. Mintrolls. I've been hanging on to this stupid box of filaments and empty spools for a long time for junkyard robots to come back, but I think we might finally throw them away.
We have one. I had last year. I had the kids decide which one to keep because I got tired of keeping them all from I'm like, you can keep one, all the rest of them. And we were hoping Junkyard Bot would come back. So the plan last year was to disassemble all the Junkyard Bots, create one Junkyard Bot with all those parts, and then ditch the rest. So the kids started a bot last year and then found out there wasn't anything at the deck. So we're going small.
That would have been our first bot we had submitted had it actually happened. Oh well. All right. Any last things before we wrap this up? Suggestions for next week's topic?
One last thing. You guys may have noticed on Friday the inspection checklist was released. I recommend every team download that, print it off, and use it to inspect the robot before heading up to competition.
Good suggestion, John. What do we want to talk about next week? Anyone have any topic ideas? Nobody? Do we want to do something more technical? I can see if I can find some. Maybe someone on here wants to volunteer to give a tutorial on something, or we could talk about training. How do teams train their students? Move away from competition season and talk about just something in general.
I would like that.
I'm curious to know what teams do in the fall, how they get ready for their students to be ready to go. So if there aren't any other suggestions,
I also can, if it's not like depending on the timeline, I would like to know how to retain or recruit mentors and coaches. We are definitely in a bind, and so it would be nice to know how teams are able to sustain that.
Sounds like an interesting topic.
Okay. So those things sort of go hand in hand too, because it's hard enough to onboard students, but I think it's also equally difficult, or perhaps more so, to onboard mentors. So I think that's maybe those two topics together can be a good topic for next week.
It'd be cool to do some shop tours too. I kind of posted one on YouTube last week, but it'd be nice to see where all you guys are. Everybody's got their own system going, so it's kind of cool to see what other people are up to.
That's a good idea. I'll see if I can take some video of our shop. We have a new space. We got it last year. We have a new space. We're out of a closet into a bigger closet. So I'm very excited about our new space. Happy to show it off.
Is the meeting going to be at the same time next week? I'm not someone who watches football,
Super Bowl.
but
That's right. What time does the Super Bowl start? It starts at like 5:00. Yeah, maybe we should skip next week. Sunday night's not going to work for most people, I think. All right. let's skip next week. But when we return, it'll be week 6. That'll be the quote unquote last week of build season, which isn't really true anymore since there's no more bag day. But let's skip next week because of the Super Bowl, and we'll come back and we'll talk about how we train our new students and how we recruit and train up new mentors. Sound good?
So, question. And this might not be a thing for the next one, but at some point, I think it would be really cool to have like a robot showcase type thing, where we all just like show off how our robots are looking or something like that.
I think we should have a reveal night meeting.
I agree.
I mean, most people make reveal videos?
We're planning on doing one this year, hopefully.
Yeah, I haven't really shared any videos of our robot because we try to have some secrets so that when our parents and sponsors come to our reveal night, they get to see some things for the first time.
There's a question I have that should probably be answered not in this meeting and maybe in the next week. But when people do their robot reveal videos, I know that we have students that have been very passionate about doing a robot reveal video, and it's been a thing of like, well, we don't have a robot yet, so there isn't really any work. But when exactly do you all do the robot reveal video? Do you do it like after competitions, before, especially with modifications to the robot? Again,
Try to do an initial. We do a reveal video for our parents and sponsors before we head up to our first competition, and then sometimes that reveal video gets reworked to include some competition video. I would bet that on any given average year, half of the video content gets shot at week 0. So it comes together really quick.
Same. Yeah, week 6, we might shoot some footage of it doing some stuff in the shop and then add in a little bit from week 0. We only have really done one reveal video, but yeah, we're kind of up to the last minute to get something running and really showable, as most of us probably are.
And I think if you want to submit your robot video to First Updates Now, that's usually the last week of February. I saw something go through on the date that if you wanted to have your robot potentially on First Updates Now reveal calves, whatever it is that they do, there is a deadline. So if you're not aware of the First Updates Now thing, they go through a bunch of teams reveal videos and talk about their robots. It's been a couple of years since we've submitted ours.
The topic of deadlines, actually, you reminded me that there are several deadlines coming up with awards and submissions for different videos. So I am remembering correctly, Dean's List and Woody Flowers awards are due on Friday. Impact is due Friday after that. And then...
Is it Friday or Thursday?
Oh, you're right. It's Thursday.
It's Thursday. It's Thursday the 9th. And it's not at midnight. It's at like 3 p.m. or Eastern, something like that.
It's at that time. I was looking at that earlier today because we are finishing up our Woody Flowers submission.
So I love the fact that we already have a topic for a future meeting. I think it's great for us to talk about our robots when there really aren't any secrets left to hide. So let's plan to do a review video before the Sunday before everyone heads to week 1 competition. Does that sound good? And then I think that just leaves us one more meeting to fill between the next time we meet and the reveal night. So good, excellent. Anything else before we log off here?
Nope, thanks, Scott.
All right. See everybody in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.